everybody to this month's behavioral talk. For those of you that don't know me, I am Thanos Bostanis. I am the program director of the Masters in Applied Behavior Analysis and Positive Behavior Support. We offer a master's degree in ABA and PBS. It is campus-based and is distance learning as well, if you prefer that option. And we have full-time and part-time pathways. We also have a peer-reviewed journal called the Tizard Learning Disability Review, and we welcome submissions from practitioners, people who might be keen to share some good practice with colleagues. Tizard Learning Disability Review is a practitioner-focused journal, so I would like to encourage you, even if it's a case study, if it's an opinion paper or something that you think is worth drawing your colleagues' attention to, by all means consider submitting your work. We're quite keen to invite practitioners and not just academics to contribute to our journal. So I will post a link for you to check that out as well. Today, we are welcoming Liza Tidwell. She's going to be discussing her experience being both a BCBA and a mom of the beauty that you see in the picture. I told Liza that, in my opinion, this is probably one of the most important talks of the year, because she said to me, "Oh, Thanos, it's not going to be the usual very heavy data-based talk." And I said to her, "I don't care. We're swimming in data. That's not what we need. We need more compassion. We need more, frontline kind of feedback from the people who both receive and deliver services." So I think she's in a unique position to offer us valuable insights. I will only interrupt Liza at 3 points to deliver keywords. Hopefully, most of you have been with us before, so you know the process. But for any of you that are new, keep an eye out for those keywords. I will deliver them vocally, make a note of them, and then at the end, add them in that form I shared. So I shared the link and I'll share it again towards the end. And I will send you your CEU within the next month or so. I'll be monitoring the chat. So by all means, if you have any pressing questions, by all means, please ask away. Otherwise, towards the end, I'm going to open up a Q&A so that Liza can answer your questions. So Liza, thank you very, very much for joining us. Take it away, please. And anything you need, I'm here supporting in the background.
Thank you, Thanos. Good evening, everybody. It's midday here in Minnesota where I'm at, and it's evening there with you guys. Thanos was talking about the soccer, and right now in Minnesota, the NBA is a big deal because the Timberwolves are playing in the playoffs, so that's taking up a lot of our time is watching all these basketball games. And yeah, I'm so happy to be here and chat to everybody. It's exciting to share my experience as both a parent and a BCBA, and share with you what led me to become a BCBA. It was something that I never heard of before I had a child with autism. And yeah, let my story begin. So where it starts, I did my undergrad in finance and business management back in South Africa. That's where I'm from. And when I was done with my undergrad, I was given the opportunity to become a lecturer at a university there, University of Stellenbosch. And anybody who's ever been to Cape Town, it's very pretty. So I was very happy to stay on and teach. And I did that for 3 years. I chose finance and business management because I thought that was a wise career choice. And I soon learned that, I wasn't that crazy about finance and business management. But what I really enjoyed was teaching, because I loved the connection that I was making with the students. And I really just thrived on that passing of information, the passing over of skills, and seeing these students make these connections. I loved it when they would come to my office and ask me all sorts of questions. I loved when they would be engaged in the learning. And so, yeah, even many years down the line when I was working in a corporate environment, I'd always look back to that before I even knew anything about ABA. I look back at that and thinking one day I want to go back to that because I really enjoyed that engagement with students. So teaching was something that was kind of in my bones, but I didn't even really know it. So after 3 years of teaching at a university, I decided to go to Dubai, and I worked in Dubai in a corporate environment. I had a number of different jobs there. I first worked in Abu Dhabi, but the driving was a bit intense. It was killing me. And so I changed to a job in Dubai. And that's also where I met my husband. And then a few years later, I was there about 5 years. A few years later, the financial crisis hit. Now, that was a long time ago. That gives away how old I am. And he got moved to Houston, and I decided to move over to Houston with him, Houston, Texas. And then after a few, maybe like 18 months in Houston, we moved to Gladstone in Australia. Now, Gladstone was a very small town, little industrial town in Australia. And that's where our story begins, because that's where we had our first child, who all of this is about and who really started this up for us. So Sierra was born there, and so were our other two babies. And just to give you an idea of how small Gladstone is, when the twins were born, they were front page news. And it was like a big deal in this little town. It was a very small town. There wasn't a lot available. There was one private hospital and one very small public hospital. It was more like a clinic size. Anyway, she was, typical baby. Everything was going well. And around 9 months old, I realized that, she wasn't doing the things that the other kiddos in her baby group were doing. She wasn't pointing to the bird in the sky or even amazed at the airplane flying in the sky. She wasn't saying mommy. She wasn't learning how to like say the beginning of a word even, right? So like I say, we had very limited services, and there weren't any pediatricians anywhere close to where we were, but there were GPs who specialized in pediatrics. And I kept on going to the pediatrician every month, going, she's not developing the way that she should be, or I'm nervous about this. And she was just this happy little kid who would, either crawl into into the GP's office or um, finally walk in there, and she would just be smiling and happy. And the GP kept on saying, "No, there's nothing wrong. Like she's happy. Look at her. She's so happy." And girls present very differently on the spectrum as well. And I kept on doing this every month, going, "Ugh, things are not okay. Things are not okay." And then eventually, when Sierra was about 16 months old, which was still really, really young for a diagnosis, when she was 16 months old, I went to this GP and I said, "I need a referral today." And back then in Australia, you needed a referral to go to a pediatrician. They were seeing the specialist and you couldn't just make an appointment. So that's why I had to fight so hard for that. But I said, "I'm not leaving today. We need a referral." So we got this referral. Closest pediatrician to us was a 3-hour drive away. We got a spot 3 months down the line. Sierra was 19 months old, and we drove down and saw this pediatrician. And by then, I was heavily pregnant with twins as well. I was the size of a whale and this little toddler who was very squirmy, and we were quite the scene. And the pediatrician was amazing. She was great. We're still talking about DSM-4 days. This was a while ago, and the pediatrician at that stage in Australia, pediatricians were able to diagnose autism. So she, observed Sierra for a little while, and then I think it was pretty clear to her. Sierra was standing by her door pushing the light switch, and every time she turned it on, she'd say, "Sun!" And she did this maybe 20 or 30 times over and over and over. So that was a clear telltale sign to the pediatrician that, Sierra enjoys her repetitive behaviors. So yeah, we came back from that. We got the diagnosis, and of course, I felt very overwhelmed, very scared. I knew that where we lived wasn't gonna be able to provide for Sierra what she needed because it was such a small town with very limited services. So I started looking into a number of things, and every professional that I spoke to at that stage only told us about speech and language and OT. So we enrolled in very aggressive speech and language and OT services. Sierra had these 2 4-hour groups a week, and she had home-based speech and language and OT services as well, which for speech and language, she was having like 12 hours combined, and that's a lot of speech and language in a week. And we were seeing some gains. There were some words that were forming, and she was forming some other skills, but nothing that was really at that level, nothing that was giving me hope, um, or making me feel that things are going to be okay. And it was about 9 months into this that I started reading, you know, as being from the US, we were reading the New York Times on a daily basis. And this one particular day, there was an article in the New York Times about the heading of the article was something like the students who, or the children who beat autism. A bit controversial these days, but I was very interested and started reading about this. And it was all about children who were receiving 25, 30, 40 hours of ABA a week, and the progress that they were making and how they were able to integrate into mainstream schooling and general ed and things like that. And so I was like, this is the hope that I need. This is what I needed to read. So I started looking into ABA services, and my heart kind of dropped when I realized there were only 16 BCBAs in the entire Australia. And we are so rural, and like, where are we going to find services where we live? Um, so we found somebody, and the closest person to us was a 7-hour drive away. It didn't stop us. We arranged with her, and we had a few meetings with her, and she flew in and she met Sierra. And at that stage, she had told me what we need to prep, what we need to do. So I had, a little desk and all that stuff ready. And I was extremely lucky to find two people where we live. To this day, I don't know how I found them in this rural area, but one person had come over with her partner, and she'd worked at CARD in California. So she had ABA experience. So, that was just amazing that we found her. And the other person was one of the very first people to receive ABA services in Australia. And she'd eventually, as an adult, moved to Gladstone, where we lived with her family. So she had not only ABA experience as a practitioner, but she had also experienced ABA. So that was pretty amazing that I found those two people. So they were part of our team, and they attended this weekend with this BCBA that we flew in, and that's how we started. It was a very simple program. We had like a one pager. She made it very simple because back then, nobody was doing virtual therapy yet. It was in COVID days where we were thrown into the deep end. So we were, starting out these virtual therapies long before COVID made it a thing, and COVID showed us that it can be successful. But it was very simple. We had all our goals on one page, and the data keeping was extremely simple. But I had to quickly learn what this was all about and what needs to be done and how it needs to look. So that is, yeah, and then after Gladstone, we got told we're going to move to Malaysia. And if I thought Gladstone was rural where we were in Australia, Malaysia was even, where we were placed in Malaysia was even more rural. We were 4 hours away from Kuala Lumpur. There was nothing. But again, we got super lucky because there were other people placed on the same project that we were working on. And one person was a social worker, and she was keen to work with Sierra, and another person was a teacher. So she had teaching as her backbone, which was fantastic. So we got lucky again. We had changed providers by that time, and we had a BCBA from California work with Sierra. And instead of having monthly catch-ups, we were having weekly virtual catch-ups, which made a massive difference. But I, again, was thrown into the deep end. I had to know exactly what the programming looks like in case somebody has a question. I had to know what the data needs to look like in case somebody had a question, because we didn't have anybody on the ground, or even anybody in the same time zone to ask a question. So if there was a 4-hour session at our home and there was a question about the data, it was better if I knew what was going on than having to wait 24 hours. So I had to really know the ins and outs. So my journey into ABA started before it started as a mother. I think, for a lot of people, you become a BCBA or a tutor, and you're in this area, and then you become a parent, and all these wonderful skills, and you can apply it to your parenting. But for me, it was the other way around. I was this parent first, and then I became a BCBA. But it was really in Malaysia, where we were so rural, that I realized this is my life now. Like, I'm living this now, and I can just as well start making something of this. I am never going to go back to finance. I didn't really enjoy finance. It was a nice realization. So I started looking at some programs. But before I get there, yeah, we went to Malaysia and then we hopped back to Australia, Canberra, a little bit more um, contemporary, bigger city. We got more services there. And then we went to London. We had a wonderful team in London. And then we hopped here into the US, where services surprisingly has been harder. I think we the structure that we had in Australia, Malaysia, the UK has been way more fitting to our family because it's been more in-home services than clinic-based services, and because it was in-home, it's been way more flexible to adapt to our family, and that's something I'm going to talk about in a little while, how important that is. And also the fact that I was able to observe everything really trained me on the job, to help implement all of these beautiful skills with my daughter. So I have a little bit of a different background in my ABA journey. I started searching for programs, and I learned when we moved to Canberra that Monash University in Melbourne, Australia, was implementing the first ever VCS course sequence in Australia. And so I applied for that. I thought that was pretty exciting to be part of that, and I got accepted into that program. And I had to fly to Melbourne a few times for some weekend workshops and things, and it was nice to meet other people who were doing the programming. What was really interesting with that one is there was a lot of people who were special ed teachers, principals, psychologists, speech and language therapists who had learned about ABA in the past, but were never able to do the coursework in Australia. And so when this opened up, there were all these people who were really keen to become BCBAs. So it made me feel, before I enrolled, I felt like, the imposter syndrome hit me. I felt people are going to think I'm just ridiculous. I'm just this mom who wants to do this. And so when I did go to these workshops and I saw these other people who were in similar eras of their lives, just because Australia hadn't allowed that coursework earlier, I felt a little bit more comfortable. But it was great to be part of like the first Australian trained BCBAs. Everybody else who'd been a BCBA in Australia had like gone to FIT or somewhere else to get their coursework done. So yeah, I did my master's in Australia. I did my field work in London in the UK, and a little bit virtually at the end because of COVID. And then I set my board exam in the US. So like all different places, but they're all kind of the same. And that's how I started, yeah, wearing these two hats, the mom hat and the professional hat. So
So let's
how
make that, Lisa, our first keyword then. Let's make hat our first keyword. Okay, guys, our first keyword is going to be hat. I repeat, our first keyword is going to be hat. All right, thank you.
so how does ABA in my living room look different than in practice? It is quite different. I've often joked and said that if you saw me in the grocery store with my kids, you'd probably never hire me. Those aisles where you're waiting to pay, and it's packed with chocolate bars and sweets and stuff, and your kids wants those bars, and you just give in because you either got to get to a soccer match, or you got 3 kids, you got to get them in the car. So instead of like following through with your no, you're like, yep, please have the chocolate. Let's just buy the chocolate, right? And so I'm like, yeah, if you saw me in the grocery store, you'll see that I often give in. I often don't follow my own rules, right? Because it's hard to always do that as a parent. And that's where the humanity comes in, and the humility. So yeah, the first one that really came to mind for me is when I'm making decisions for Sierra, I make it out of emotion. I make it out of the care and the concern that I have for her. I want her to be safe. So I worry about her future. I worry about her crossing the street. I worry about her being vulnerable. So the decisions and the goals that I set for her are emotionally driven. When I'm in a clinical setting, or in my professional setting, those goals that we create are, we want to be objective with them, right? We don't want to bring, we always, it's hard to not bring an emotion, but it's more your objectivity that guides your treatment than your emotion. When I'm at home, life interrupts the plan. There are 2 dogs, a blind cat, 3 kids. Right now we have a foster puppy. So yeah, things never go according to plan these days, like we want. But when I'm in my clinical setting, I come with my bag of magic, and I have my plan of how this 3-hour session is going to go, and how I'm going to structure it, and how I'm going to implement these goals. And so, things can look more structured and more planned when I'm in my clinical setting than it can at home when I'm with my children. Even, it's not that I throw out my bag of ABA tricks. I have them in my pocket. It's just that I need to be a lot more flexible when life does happen. And goals shift all the time. Tonight I might have in my head, like, we're going to be working on toothbrushing, and I'm going to back chain this for Sierra. But then, all of a sudden, one kid comes in and they scrape their knee. And so I have to shift that goal. And instead of back chaining the toothbrushing sequence, what do? I just brush her teeth for her because a kid needs a band-aid. So things change with real life, where if you're in your clinical setting, you have programmed, there aren't as many disruptions. Things are predefined. We have step by step, right? And it's just easier to stick to that and plan that out. At home, I am Sierra's safety, her space, and all of that is super reinforcing to her. The fact that she is so loved at home and that she can feel safe, that is reinforcing. When I'm out of my clinical setting, I have my bag of toys, all sorts of tricks, and I have specific reinforcement systems that I follow. It is very difficult for any parent to follow a particular reinforcement system, unless it's maybe like a sticker chart of something, right? But anything that isn't super easy to follow, I have found is very difficult, and it's hard for us to expect parents to do that. Or yeah, it is just difficult for parents to implement that unless it is very simple. And also, when I'm in my clinical setting, there is data that tells me what happened yesterday. If it tells me what happened with each tutor, and it tells me what happened today, and it might give me a trend of what might happen tomorrow. But when I'm at home, there is so much more that tells me about my child. It might be just her looking to the left, and I know she's gonna bolt right now. Or it's just like breath that she takes while I'm talking, and I know she's gonna yell at me any minute to say, no, I don't want to go brush my teeth. There's so much more that tells me about her behavior. And then that behavior is felt. It's felt very deeply, where in a clinical setting, it's more measured, defined, and we graph it, and it's there on paper. Where at home, it's way more emotional. I have a few things that I'm going to chat to you guys about. The lessons that I've learned from my living room that are good lessons to take into practice. These are things like compassion, empathy, taking pauses. And throughout this, I'm not saying put the science aside. We definitely need the science, but we also need that human part that comes with the science. You need your soft skills to make the science really valuable for families. So one of the most powerful reinforcers that we all know how important this is rapport building, reinforcement, and not just with our clients. It is so vital to build rapport with the families, and not just necessarily the caregivers, but also maybe the siblings. I cannot tell you how much value it is placed in our family when the siblings have been involved in the therapy. I'm not saying you should be teaching the toddler how to toilet And I'm not saying you should be babysitting the 4-year-old, but there is room for you to involve the sister in play skills or in coloring, and that is super reinforcing going forward for the whole family, and it just builds this flexibility and quality of life for everybody. And when you build this relationship with the parents, you build a lot of trust, and when they trust you, they are more open to observing what you're doing and implementing what you are doing and trusting that it's going to work. I I've always been Sierra's number one, and I probably will always be her number one, but I haven't always been her best playmate. That is something that's definitely skills that I have lacked. But because the therapists have come into my house and they have built rapport with me, I have also been way more willing to watch them do stuff and learn how they play with her. And when I see that and I trust that they are doing what they think is best for her and that they know what they're doing and they're building rapport with her, and I see this shared joy that they have with her, I'm observing them and I'm learning from them. And the value that that has brought when I've learned how to be silly with her, how to do the Gruffalo script with her, or how to play with, like, she has these beautiful Muppets that she loves, and how to like play with these Muppets. And like those things have helped so much in getting her to sit down at the dinner table and eat a new food with a family or just sit with the family. Um, so it's really important to build that relationship, not just with your client. You're not just going in. That is your main goal, is to serve that client. But it's also really important to have that relationship and build that rapport with the caregivers and give a little bit to the siblings too. Generalization is everything. It is so important for our kiddos to be able to use skills everywhere. I know this is one of our principles, and the textbooks tell us, Cooper tells us how important generalization is, but generalization provides so much flexibility, freedom, quality of life, and joy to families. One big example that comes to mind for me is Sierra using a bathroom. She was able to use the toilet at our house and anybody else's house, and she was able to use it at school. But going out and about to restaurants, parks, anywhere like that, she was so scared of the hand dryers in the restrooms that it really placed extreme limits on us as a family and what we were able to do. We had to plan everything out so meticulously, where we're gonna go, when we're gonna go, what time we're gonna go. It was really very, very limiting. And so we worked very, very hard on getting her comfortable with public restrooms and being able to use a restroom in multiple settings. Um, I'm so sorry, 1 second. I got a new phone and the new phone's alarm, the old phone's alarm went off and my new phone packed away. But yeah, that's just her being able to use multiple bathrooms added so much flexibility to our lives and less frustration, less planning. It really alleviated a ton of anxiety for us. Another really good example of just how it brought joy, how it can bring joy, is Sierra learned to read, and she was able to read at school, and she'd read, at the kitchen table or at home in her sessions and stuff. But then when she learned to generalize this reading skill, and she'd be out and about, and she'd like just randomly read stuff, it just made me so happy to see and it made her so proud of herself. And we were visiting friends in Houston, Texas once, and we were driving on the highway. And one of her favorite things, like, she loves animals, right? So anything to do with an animal. And as we were driving down this highway, she saw it was this building that said squirrel construction. And out of the blue in the back seat, she goes, squirrel. And she like points to this building that had squirrel construction on. It's a very strange name for a construction firm. But anyway, she recognized the word squirrel and she was so happy to see this word completely out of context of where she had learned it. And it just brought so much joy. It was so important. And if we didn't work on generalizing those skills, that joy would have been missing. Oh, and really another example is her taking care of her animals. She's learned to take care of her own animals, but recently she started taking care of some of the animals in our neighborhood as well. So she's earned like $5 taking some neighbors' dogs for a walk. So, that's a really good life skill to learn. She's earning some pocket money. She can pay for her own reinforcers. It's important. Behavior happens in context. It's important for us to remember that there are many events that can influence behavior. We know about setting events and taking that into consideration. But really try and be human about them. Sierra turned 13 and she's now a little girl. She's now a young girl who has her period. And so, if we try and do food tolerance 2 days before she has her period when she's just really uncomfortable and stuff, like that's just going to go downhill. That's not going to work. She's not going to like us for that. When she is just a little bit more moody than usual, it's a good thing to take into consideration. Yeah, and there's so much human landscape to consider around why a behavior happens. Did she maybe want to play with her sister, and now her sister has said no, and now she's grumpy about that? What else is happening that we're not taking into consideration? Is it gonna storm today and the atmosphere feels different, and she doesn't like it being so dark out there? Um, what else is going on for her? Did she have a bad day at school? And just taking a step back and considering, some of these clients can't always tell us in that many words what is going on for them. And it's our job to take a breath and see if there's anything else that we need to be considering. Compassion. It's a big word these days, but it's really, really important. It is not, it is not fluff. It is a soft skill that is so imperative. Just these parents are so tired. They're so exhausted. They are burning the candle on both ends. And then they're still Googling how to relight that candle again after it's been burnt out. They're so stressed. They're so tired. And I've often heard other behavior analysts complain because parents aren't following through, or they're not taking data, or they're not following the plan. And it's not, parents have you there. They really need you. They've gone to all these lengths to research and find you. And it's not that they're being resistant. It's not that they don't appreciate all the programming that is taking place. It is that they are absolutely exhausted. And it is our job to then go and see, what are we doing that we need to do differently? Are we asking them to take too much data, maybe? Are we asking them to implement something that is really unreasonable? Like in my experience, just following through in the typical sense of the word is very difficult when you got a household full of kids and groceries and dinner to make and everything. So let's, try and put that into context and adapt what we are expecting parents to do. I remember there was when we were in Canberra, Australia, we had most of Sierra's therapy at that stage in her room, and she had a closet full of reinforcers that we would lock up, and she'd only get those when she had her sessions. But we also had a toy room because there were 3 kids, right? And the toy room was essential in our house. We needed the kids to have a toy room. They were little, they needed all their toys in there to keep themselves busy so that we could make dinner or unpack the groceries and stuff like that. And what Sierra would sometimes do is she would run out of her room and she'd go to the toy room, and escape whatever demand was placed on her. And I remember meeting with the BCBA once, and she asked if we could lock the toy room. And I was like, no, we cannot lock the toy room. This is not going to happen. Um, Definitely not. Yeah. So you just go take into consideration what these families are going through, right? And build that trust and rapport, because having that with them and showing compassion for them is going to build more trust and rapport. Humility goes hand in hand with compassion. I feel, what matters to this family, what feels doable right now. Also, try and take in kind of the atmosphere right now. Do you feel like if you put something in place there that you're going to burden a system that is already so overburdened in their home, a home system that's already so overburdened? Can they take one more data sheet? Is that going to be too much for this family? What is there that you don't understand yet? Um, and sometimes you have to admit that some behavior plan or some program that you've wanting to or that you implemented isn't exactly what this family needs right now, or it isn't working. So let's take a step back. And also sometimes things are not going to go as fast as we want them to go. And there's life happens and things are going to interfere. And are we making progress? Maybe it's not as quick and it's not at the trajectory that you want, but is it are we progressing? Are we moving forward? I did a 10K race the other day, and I saw somebody on the side of the road with a sign that I love now. I want a t-shirt that said forward is a pace. And forward, even for these families, the smallest gains can be so life-changing in that moment. So don't get frustrated when things don't always go the way that you thought that they're going to go, or that you want them to go. Yes, we all want the best for these families, but sometimes the small gains are fine as well. And this, I when Sierra started ABA therapy back, our first stint in Australia and then in Malaysia, for me, ABA was the go-to. Whenever I met a family with a child on the spectrum, I was like, how can you not get ABA? How can you not get your child enrolled for ABA therapy? And then we were in camera and we had a not so great experience with ABA. And I quickly learned that if that was my first experience with ABA, I probably would have run away too. Sierra, we had a team meeting, and this is just one example of something that it was a little bit sour. We had a team meeting, and this particular VCA wanted to see Sierra um, do a particular skill. It was something simple. It was a DTT thing at the table, and then Sierra was able to get her reinforcement, and her reinforcement was our iPad with Peppa Pig on it. And there was this little girl. She was so tiny, and she was so excited to to see this Peppa Pig video, and she was clapping her hands. And this BCBA asked the tutor to have Sierra put her hands down. And I remember in the moment feeling, oh, this isn't right. And I remember seeing the tutor's face as well, just like dropping, going, oh, she doesn't feel comfortable with this. And it took me a few days to process all of this and write back to the BCBA and say, we're not going to be doing this. Like, we're not going to be, if Sierra is joyful like that, we're going to have her be joyful like that. But I realized too that if I didn't have all my really, really, really good experiences with ABA before this bad one, I probably would have run away. And that's where part of the humility comes in. Like, if I always thought like, oh yeah, ABA is like, this is the go-to. This is the go-to for all of us, right? But have some humility, because not everybody has had this really great experience, and that's maybe why they're not so keen sometimes. So it's not necessarily that we cannot tell people all the time that this is what your child needs. Sometimes we just need to show them. And I've had a few friends now that I've made in the autism community who have been not very keen on their kids having ABA therapy. And I haven't tried to convince them. All I've ever done is like have them in our house when Sierra has therapy and have them come over for a cup of tea or whatever so that they can see like this is joyful. Like Sierra's having the best time of her life when her therapists are there. She's having so much fun. And I've had a few friends transition from other standard therapies over to ABA because they have seen how different it can be and how joyful it can be. I realize how much time have we got, Thanos? 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
We can go up to 7 p.m. if you need it, Lisa, and we can do the Q&A for those last 5 minutes. We can go a bit over. I can deliver the last keyword, and don't worry about the
Okay.
time. Take your time. Take your time. I'm sure people are enjoying this. Can I deliver the second keyword since we've paused? Guys, let's go with family as it's on the slide. Second keyword for your CU, family. And don't worry if anybody needs to leave at 7, I'll deliver the third keyword then. And if we need to run over a bit so that Lisa can take her time and pace herself, we can stay behind the rest of us. It's recorded anyway, it's going to be on YouTube. So don't worry, guys. Back to you, Lisa.
I'll try and not keep everybody too long. I've touched on this. The family as a unit, and treat not just your client, treat them all. Like I said, what has really brought us quality for our family and so much flexibility is when everybody's been involved. When we have even involved the dogs in therapy. Okay, not they haven't given the therapy, but we have like with Sierra, how to care for the animals, how to take them for a walk, and then like getting her to train them, like simple things like sitting down. And like I mentioned earlier, when she was able to do that, she was able to generalize that into something else that is earning her pocket money. And like it makes her feel part of the community. So it's important to see everybody as a unit and the siblings too. I feel oftentimes, um, we don't know how important this relationship between the siblings and our client is, and it's been so fundamental, that bond that has been built, and we had to do that through therapy. We had to do that through ABA therapy and help Sierra bond with her brother and sister. We had a lot of intervention plans because she didn't know how to engage with them, but now they are her preferred people, and it's beautiful to see. We've done a few theme park trips in the last year, and the person that Sierra chooses to have her sit next to all the rides is either her brother or sister. She doesn't pick me and she doesn't pick her dad. It's every time she goes on a ride, she wants to sit next to Gigi or Everest. And it's beautiful because her siblings are going to be there for longer than us. And it's not just that we want to leave her siblings to care for her, but we want them to have a valuable relationship going forward. That's like so fundamental. We want them to be able to play together, have joyful experiences together. So yeah, whenever you can, include the family. And again, you don't have to toilet train the toddler. Just take a few minutes to involve um, the other siblings when you can. And then also remember mom and dad. They just need to be mom and dad. So when you are expecting them to implement certain programming, or you are expecting them to take certain data, take it in the whole context of what is going on with that family right now. Even with all the skill sets I have right now, even knowing how to take data and things, something as simple as just like writing down what Sierra had for dinner is sometimes too much for me. Add it 2 to 1, just create this very super simple data sheet. Then I just like with like pictures of the different foods, and I just ticked, and that was amazing because all I had to do was tick. I didn't have to go and write the date, write the food, how much she ate. All I had to be like, oh, she ate this. Like, and it makes just that little change makes it so much more doable for me to do. I mean, you think, oh yeah, writing all that down only is going to take you 50 seconds. But seriously, when you're running around with 3 kids who have 3 different schedules and all this other stuff, and you're trying to juggle work and whatever, parents are overwhelmed. So yeah, make it as simple and as easy as you can. And another really important thing for a family is empower them. I felt a lot of the times when I met with some of the BCBAs, they were super helpful in empowering me for advocating for my child, for different services, IEP services, and here in Minnesota, we have different waivers with funding that you can use, but having just having the support and just somebody else who can give me the words to use to advocate for my child and empower me is very helpful. And just knowing there's somebody who's got your back who's helpful. Very important to be flexible as well. You know, family systems need to be malleable. And so if we're going to be setting these goals and these methods for parents to use, make sure that parents understand it's okay to be flexible. We don't need them to implement it exactly like it is on paper. If they need to tweak something, it is okay. We're going to be fine with it. We're going to adjust as well. Measure what matters. Yes, we want the data, we want the graphs, we want all of that, but we also want to see the experiences that families have. We want to see the joy, we want to see the independence. Um, we we taught Sierra again through a task analysis, breaking down every baby step how to blow out candles. And it wasn't until her 4th birthday that she was able to blow out her own birthday candles. But the joy that she experienced when she was able to do that was immense. Like, you know, we didn't have on our 4th birthday, we didn't have 4 birthday candles. There was a cake full of candles. There were like 20 candles on the cake because by then she was so excited that she was able to do this. And I remember we'd go to places and so she'd overgeneralize the skill. She would go to a restaurant and she'd go blow out every candle in the restaurant, for example. And as she blew them out and like the smoke comes up, she would go, "Holy smokes!" And it would make us all laugh and giggle. But yeah, you know, that was just such joyful things that you cannot put that in a graph or in a on a data sheet. And sometimes it's important to just take a moment, just pause. You don't have to intervene with every single behavior. You don't have to have an answer for every single worry that a parent has, or you don't have to have the answer right now. You can say, I'm going to come back to you. Sometimes it's okay to take a few seconds and see if there's something that you've missed in the behavior. Sometimes it's okay to be right next to the child and let them kind of sort things out for themselves. Have you ever done that thing, the 5-second close your eyes thing, and then you're supposed to clap your hands after you think it's 5 counts, and if everybody's eyes are closed, you hear a person clap here and then there and then there, and everybody's 5 counts are very, very different. So everybody's moment is going to be short or long, but you realize that that moment feels much longer than what it really is. But just take a step back and think, you know, what else am I missing? What else can I do in this situation? And see what unfolds. Maybe, you know, maybe the child just needed a minute to self-regulate, or you can co-regulate right next to them. Also, I questions. What did the family need today? You know, the same with, I just said like a pause. What is there? What can I read in the room that isn't being said right now? And also, what is this going to look like out of session? And to tie into this, intake. Intake forms. We all have to do intake forms and make sure that the questions that you ask in an intake is really valuable. Parents like us, we fill in hundreds of questionnaires every, like, you know, not hundreds, but a lot. It feels like 100 questionnaires every year. I have to fill in Sierra's name and her birth date. I don't know how many times. Whatever you can do to make these easier, because if the form is easier, you're going to get a lot more valuable information out of it. If the parent isn't exhausted by the fact that they have to write their child's name at the top of every form, they're going to be able to give you a lot more information when it really matters. So make sure that if there are 2 questions that you can gel together, do that. Look at your intake forms. And if you can, you know, interviews. interviews are so much easier. I feel like when we're having a conversation, there's so much more information that I can gain out of a conversation with a parent as well than literally sitting down and filling in a form. And I thought, I wasn't very young when I became a BCBA. I was already a mom. I was much older, but what would I say to myself now if I look back, right? And for those of you who are working towards getting your credential, yeah, take it easy. You don't have to pretend like you have it all figured out. Nobody does. And we all learn on the job. That's kind of the point, is that we're evolving. And sometimes we're gonna cry after a session because it was really, really hard. And sometimes we're gonna call the parent by the wrong name. And sometimes you're gonna write a behavior plan that isn't perfect or that flops, and that's okay too, because we learn from that and we move on from that. But you're going to learn a lot more by being human, by putting your heart into this than you would out of the Cooper book by itself. Yeah. So, and own your mistakes and wear your comfy shoes, bring your snacks, and bring your bag of magic with you. And just to end, we need the science, but bring your soft skills. We need them. The parents need them to feel safe with you in their house. And then I wanted to share a few things that ABA has made possible in our lives. I know, this is a hard job. This is hard. Sometimes you get bitten, you get hit, you get yelled at. Sometimes the parents are grumpy because they were stressed out. And sometimes you're just having an overwhelming day. You have to travel many places to see different clients, and it is not always the easiest job, but I want to encourage you to keep on going, because it really matters. The work that you do really, really, really matters. These are just a few things that Sierra has been able to do because of ABA, because of the skills that she has learned through ABA, tolerance skills, um, waiting skills, they're similar, but she's been able to be involved in community events like trick-or-treating in our neighborhood, Easter egg hunts. We recently did puppy yoga, which was amazing. And if she didn't have the tolerance skill of waiting, that would have been very difficult for her to sit through a 15-minute yoga session. She was able to learn to ride her bike because we were able to break down the skills into little baby steps. And that has been life-changing. She can now ride her bike with her siblings. She's been able to learn road signs. She has learned to ride a horse. She can put a saddle on a horse. It's amazing. She has flown more than 400 times in her life, which is phenomenal considering how, difficult that is. And she has not flown short flights. She has flown really long haul flights as well. And that takes a lot of tolerance, but she's been able to adapt through life. And because of the skill sets that she's learned through ABA, and also the tools that I have learned from the people in my home and by observing them, she has slept in more different beds than I can count, Airbnb beds, hotel beds, beds on the floor, makeshift beds, inflatable beds, like bed on a cruise ship. And yeah, ABA has just helped her be flexible and adaptable and prepare for these things. She's able to go to a restaurant with the family. Usually it's a pizza restaurant, but still, we're able to go out for meals as a family, which is great. She has a relationship with her siblings and with her grandparents. There's a picture there of Sierra sitting with my mom and joking. And that's also, my mom has also observed people in our home and seeing how they interact with her. So that is so incredibly valuable for my mom to have observed this and know how to interact with Sierra. And then, like, two big things we did years ago, we did this 7-day cruise on the Whitsundays in Australia, which at the time I thought I was insane to even consider that. There was no internet. How we're going to keep this kiddo busy for 7 nights? But she did amazing. She was out in the ocean. She snorkeled. These are things that we we prepared her so well for it through the skill sets that we learned through ABA. And then the biggest one recently was that she was a flower girl at my sister's wedding. And again, we structured the routine building. We taught her how to sit still. She sat through the whole ceremony on my dad's lap and watched her aunt get married. And it was just amazing. There wasn't a dry eye. Nobody expected that she was going to be able to do this, and she did. So, you are not just working with somebody in the home. You are not just teaching them routines. You are not just teaching them simple skills at home or school. You are really changing lives when you do this work. And, there's parents like me who thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because it really adds so much to our quality of life and to her quality of life. Yeah, stay human while you apply the science. We love the science. But yeah, the science helps us do things right, and your heart helps you do the right things. That's it.
That's a lovely way to finish. Thank you, Liza. Folks, please do prepare your questions. I've been noticing the reactions, Lisa. Just so you know, I've never observed so many reactions for anybody's talk. So I think you've got really through to people. Our last keyword is going to be Sierra. Our last keyword is going to be Sierra, just because that cutie pie, I think, has everybody really touched and emotional right now. So you can check the link for feedback in the chat. I'm also going to put the CEU link now, folks. Please fire off any questions you have in the chat, and I'll read them out to Lisa. Some comments, Lisa, in the meantime, as people are preparing their questions. I know they need a bit of time to type, so I'm going to buy us some time just reading out some comments that have come through so far. Some people have kind of supported what you said about the soft skills, and they said that the constructional questionnaire from Gold Diamond's work is quite powerful. Also, our colleagues at WAB's work on constructional exposure therapy. Some people have said that they have found that quite useful. Someone said, I really enjoyed this presentation. It brought a refreshing sense of positivity and reinforced how impactful ABA can be as we navigate the challenges of working in this field. I agree. We've been hearing a lot of critiques against some of the historical applications and current applications of our science, and with good reason to in many cases. So it's nice to know that we're not all only getting it wrong, and that we sometimes get it right. So thank you for reminding us, Lisa. That's absolutely beautiful. Thanks so much. I think this refers to Sierra being the flower girl at your sister's wedding. Amazing to hear your journey. Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Loved it. Don't worry, guys. Spell Sierra any way you want. I'm not gonna get stuck on the typo. It's fine. Just spell it any way it makes sense to you. Don't be too worried about that. I'm pretty casual. What an amazing presentation, so powerful and refreshing. Can I confirm the first word is hat? Yes, it was. Apologies for my accent. I know that sometimes it makes things hard for you. I'm testing your listening skills, native speakers. Lovely presentation, someone said. Someone says, I agree with what Thanos said at the beginning, that this is one of the most important and interesting lectures we have seen. Yes, indeed, I agree. Great presentation. Thank you for sharing your joyful, positive experiences. I don't see any questions coming through. I think you've. Wait, there's something. Let me check that out. Someone says, I have stopped asking parents to take data because it just seems too onerous. If I were to start again, did you find any particular data collection type or topic actually helpful as a parent, Lisa?
Yeah, I would say as simple as possible. If you don't need the data, if you can do without the data, I would say do without it. We don't want to, if you really don't need to place any more strain on the parents, then don't. But if there's something that you need data on that you don't ever see in your sessions, make it as simple as possible. Do it on their phones, on a note. That could be really helpful, or literally, like I said, like something as you stick on the wall and it's just a tick, or plus or a minus, nothing more. Parents,
Mm.
it is onerous. It takes effort, and effort that they oftentimes don't have in the middle of dinner prep and bedtime prep and sibling rivalry and things, So make it as simple as you can if you really, really need it.
Very good advice. Very good advice. Okay. I don't see any other questions, Lisa. There is one. Thanks so much, Lisa. Really one of the best behavioral talks ever attended. It's amazing to have an insight from being a parent and a professional. Provides us practitioners to be more humane, not to just tick a set of boxes and be robotic. Thanks once again. Loved every bit of it. You're spoiling her with all the praise. Have you got any questions for her, Gilot? We've been immersing her in reinforcement. Stop spoiling Lisa. Come on, ask her some tough questions here.
Punish me.
I'm only joking, obviously. I expected it to be like this because, as I said at the beginning, Lisa, our field needs this. With data, we swim in data. This is what we need. How do you compare ABA practices across all the countries you worked / traveled / resided in?
Was the question, how do I compare them?
Yeah. How do you compare ABA practices across the countries you kind of have experience with?
I would say my best experience was in the UK. I felt like even though the certification was fairly new, there were a lot of people who had already had a lot of experience in ABA. So that was really one of my better experiences, and we were able to build a really amazing team there with people who had ABA experience as tutors, and then we had a phenomenal BCBA. I don't know if she's in the chat, but shout out to Jo Wesley. She was fantastic. Um, and we in Gladstone, Australia, where we were pretty rural, and in Malaysia, we didn't go for local services. We went for a BCBA who was in, different areas, different places. So it was kind of chosen by us, and things were okay. And it's hard to say because, I don't want to necessarily criticize the experience that we had in Canberra, Australia, but we had a rough ride in Canberra, Australia. We thought when we moved there, oh yeah, it's gonna be great because it's the capital of Australia. Surely we're gonna get what we need there, right? And we went through 3 different BCBAs in a 2-year period there. And so, but ABA was also not regulated in Australia at that time. And so you had some people implementing ABA who weren't that passionate about what they were doing. I think we're
Mm.
in a different era now. This is many years later. Now you have a board there. So the application is probably very different than what it was. But overall, my best experience was in London. I felt like it was way more flexible. The programming that we were receiving was way more flexible for our family. And yeah, Canberra, Australia was hard. And also here in the US, I have struggled. We've gone back to getting virtual case management and not getting local case management because the services haven't been very malleable for our family. It's been very rigid. And I think that could be just Minnesota, or it could be our state. I think there are other states where things are way more modern and adaptive already. And we know, the majority of the research comes from the US. So ABA is great in the US, but maybe here in Minnesota, where I am, and where there's a heavy emphasis on on clinic-based services, so children go to clinics, and not so much in-home therapy. That's not been our greatest experience. We're definitely, for our family, for it to fit our family, we need in-home services where it's so much easier to generalize skills and carry over. It needs to be in-home or school-based for our family.
Mm. Another question says, what was the hardest or easiest thing to teach Sierra wearing both hats, so mom and professional?
Oh, oh, food tolerance, like any food thing is very difficult. I found I kind of don't want to touch that one. it flows into so many other things, right? It flows into like family dinner time, and it's such a sensitive thing too, that maybe that is not something that mom needs to touch until it is really mastered. And also, really, I'm her safe person, but the tutors are usually, the person who's more reinforcing. So because that's such a difficult thing to teach, um, that is really where we want the tutors to
Mm.
to focus on. Yeah. And then that's something I can do later on. But that's been one of the hardest, yeah.
Another question says, any tips on how to make sure that what we teach is truly meaningful to the family and the child? For example, you talked about teaching her how to teach the dog to sit, which would not be considered a quote unquote typical target.
Right. That is where it gets difficult in the US, because we have insurance covered ABA, right? And so all of this has to be run through insurance, where in other places we didn't necessarily have to run and get it through approved through insurance. Now we run our home program privately, we pay out of pocket. So, it depends. Like teaching the dog how to sit is a life skill in our family, because the dogs are part of our family. They, we have a cabin that we drive to, and the dogs come with to the cabin, and we take the dogs for walks, and the dogs come driving with when we take Sierra to school. So for us, that really does mold into our family, but it depends on the family. That's where that cultural humility comes in, right? For our family, our animals are really important. There's always a dog in one of the kids' beds, sleeping with them at night. But for other families, that is not going to matter. You really have to take it into the context of the family. And this is also where that rapport with the family becomes so important with the parents, because they have to feel comfortable enough with you to tell you, this isn't really a goal for my kid, or this is really a goal for my kid. Um, and then also when there is trust, and they trust that you have their child's best interest at heart, then they're also going to trust if you say, maybe we shouldn't work on this skill right now. Like we can't really teach a kiddo to potty train if they're not even able to pull up their own pants yet. If like, that's just one example, right? Let's work on their fine motor skills first before we work on them going to the toilet. So sometimes if we have that rapport with the parents, then we can do it the other way around too. And we could say, well, right now we maybe want to work on these other prerequisites first.
Uh, Jo was in the audience, just so you know, and she says the way you trusted and supported the team while also questioning and challenging them was incredible. So they thank you very, very much. Uh, Someone else says thank you for the response and that you made them feel proud for being a member of the UK Society for Behaviour Analysis. And the final comment that someone says, I also find addressing food issues the hardest with my daughter as well. It brings up so many emotions in me. Um, so I think some folks can relate, Lisa. Okay, thank you, everybody. Don't forget to click the link for your CUs, because once we conclude the session, you're not going to have access to the chat. Bear with me. I'm going to sort them out within the next month. And the final comment before I thank you, Lisa, it's lovely that teaching Sierra those interaction skills with your animals has been such a behavioral task for her to make a beautiful relationships in your community. And I agree, that's also a very valid point. So Lisa, thank you ever so much for taking the time today. People loved your talk. Uh, Folks, do nudge friends and colleagues to watch it when we make it available on our YouTube. Usually we do it within a week or so. And you can always rewatch it or get some of your staff members to watch it. I think some of the messages were really powerful. Thank you, Lisa, again. Hopefully, we're going to have you again in the future to talk more to us about your
I'd love
work and
to.
your experiences and how your family is doing and how Sierra is doing and everybody. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a good one. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Thomas.
Bye bye. Bye bye.